people have to grapple and have to make huge sacrifices, as the Iraqis are making, the Palestinians are making, and others are making, or as the people who achieved socialism in China, in the old Soviet Union, etc. They made huge sacrifices to achieve it. It's not going to come easy, because capitalism, unfortunately, does not abolish itself. It does not naturally disappear. If the present crisis does not lead to revolution led by the proletariat, it is capable of surviving. Don't think that just because this crisis is a tsunami that hasn't happened like that for 80 years, it will automatically lead to socialism. Working people have to take their destiny in their own hands and do something to get rid of the system. If it doesn't, having inflicted misery for 8, 10, 15 years, possibly even gone through a war, the system can't survive unless working people take action to get rid of it. 7, the struggle of the proletariat for the overthrow of capitalism must be led by a vanguard revolutionary party of the proletariat. 8, that the state is nothing but an instrument in the hands of one class for the suppression of another class, that the proletariat too needs a state of its own, that the struggle of the proletariat for socialism must lead to the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which lasts for a whole historical period, and is the instrument of the proletariat for suppressing any attempts of the bourgeoisie at the restoration of capitalism on the one hand, and for creating the material and social conditions for transition to the higher stage of communism, in which the state withers away and society is able to move from the formula, from each according to his ability to each according to his work, and from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. It is in this context that we have to criticize our opponents in, for example, the CPB, Communist Party of Britain, who have a wonderful formula of painlessly achieving socialism. One day they will elect a majority to the House of Commons composed of communists, mainly Labour MPs. And these people are going to go and bring socialism. Apart from the fact that it's rather touching and naive to have such faith in the Labour Party that it will usher in socialism, or that it even actually desires to achieve socialism. And then that you will have these MPs out of 650 or whatever it is, all we have to have is 250 or 260, and we'll legislate socialism. Like the bourgeois state simply does not exist. There's no such thing as the bourgeois monarchy. There's no such thing as the bourgeoisie with its ownership of the means of production. That it has no army, it has no police, it has no judiciary, it has no civil servant. They'll all, like the good English gentlemen and ladies they are, they'll simply abide by the legislation passed by Parliament, and they say, right, our time's come, we had good time for 300 years, now we're going to go, now you're very clever, you've legislated us, and we'll go and retire and be good members of socialist society, we'll go to work. Now, the whole idea for a bourgeois to go to work for a living is in itself the worst kind of hell that could ever be, apart from the fact that you've taken away all the joys of existence. You can no longer exploit somebody. What do you live for? You can no longer express somebody. What do you live for? There's no prostitution. There's no drug trafficking. There's no violence in the streets. There's no thuggery. I mean, really, what would life be without all these things? They're not going to be legislated themselves away. They're not going to constitutionally allow themselves to be made redundant. You have to fight for that. And the whole idea that even after so many horrendous lessons that one has learned from history, that there are people who are mummified enough to think in those terms. That is, because also a contradiction in terms to the extent mummies think, that they can actually reach such conclusion. And next 9, in the words of Lenin, if we translate the Latin scientific, historical, philosophical term, dictatorship of the proletariat, into more simple language, it means the following. Only a definite class, namely that of the urban workers and industrial workers in general, is able to lead the whole mass of the toilers and exploit it in the struggle for the overthrow of the bourgeoisie, in the struggle to maintain and consolidate the victory, in the work of creating the new socialist system, in the whole struggle for the complete abolition of classes. I'm nearly there. 10, that commodity production and socialism are incompatible, and it is the function of socialism to eliminate commodity production and the market and make way for planned production, which instead of being regulated by profit, is guided by the principle of the maximum satisfaction of the constantly rising material and spiritual needs of the people. There are plenty of communist parties in the world who think that we can't get rid of the market because market alone introduces efficiency into the production. Far from introducing efficiency, market is the one which actually brings you to a point where explosions occur because the market creates its own mechanisms which do not actually cater to the needs of the masses of the people. And this is done not only by parties not in power, but also by some parties in power. But market socialism will not in the end work. Market socialism finally is in the final analysis, the road back to capitalism. 11, that all bourgeois prejudices against the Soviet Union of the period of J.V. Stalin's leadership must be dropped. During that period, the Soviet Union made earth-shaking achievements in every field, from socialist construction through collectivization to victory in the anti-fascist war, of which the proletarians and oppressed people of the world have every right and duty to be proud. Negating that important period in the history of the international working class movement has only served to negate the most glorious achievements of the working class to date, to defame the dictatorship of the proletariat and the international communist movement, and to sully the banner of Marxism-Leninism. Our movement must understand that anti-Stalinism always was, and now is, a cover for attacking Marxism-Leninism and especially the dictatorship of the proletariat. The purpose being, it's a quotation from Stalin, to kill in the working class the faith in its own strength, faith in the possibility and inevitability of its victory, and thus to perpetuate capitalist slavery. That's a quotation from Stalin's report to the 18th Party Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1938. And finally, that the guard and fight against all forms of opportunism, social democracy, Trotskyism, and revisionism must never lessen, for the fight against imperialism is a sham and a humbug unless it's inseparably bound up with the fight against opportunism. These are the things we should keep in mind, and there's just one other thing that I'd like to mention before I let you out of your misery of having to listen to me, is that when I wrote this collection of essays when I put together this collection of essays in 2007, this was on 15th of March 2007, the stock market had recovered, the economy seemed to be doing rather well, and I said somewhere in my preface, I said, of course, in the light of this economic recovery that has taken place since the last recession, many of the figures cited in the various articles reproduced in this book are now out of date. Despite this turn in the capitalist economy, represented by the new figures, the analysis presented here remains correct. And I added the sentence, one does not have to be a prophet to be able to foretell the inevitable and fairly sharp crash that is bound to follow this period of industrial and commercial prosperity and stock market buoyancy, for the very means which capitalism uses to overcome the barriers inherent to it, again place these barriers in its way and on a more formidable scale. And that's precisely happened. I had just literally published this book. It was coming to the shelves when in July 2007, the crisis that we are now in the middle of threatened. And if the bourgeoisie is by one means or another able to save capitalism from this crisis, it will only be laying the grounds for an even more formidable crisis subsequently. So unless and until the working people learn to get rid of this system, they'll continue to flounder from pillar to post. Thank you for listening to me.